While Helen is reading, I'll switch it and see if I can find one that does work. Welcome everyone to this exceedingly auspicious occasion. It's the anniversary of the passing of Paramhansa Yogananda from this world. It was a tragic and heartbreaking and glorious moment all at the same time. And it opened the floodgates of heaven really for all of us. So the beams of divine consciousness are flooding us all the time. And the only question is whether or not we receive them. So this is a great opportunity when we're all together for us to unite our consciousness in deep attunement so that Master's presence, which is always present, will be drawn even more powerfully into each one of us. We are exceedingly fortunate to have a temple, to have a community, to have devotion to such a great line of masters. And let us, with all our hearts, in gratitude and enthusiasm and courage, receive that ray tonight.
My Guru, thou light of my life, thou camest to spread wisdom's glow over the path of my soul. Centuries of darkness dissolved before the shafts of thy luminous help. As a naughty baby, I cried for my divine mother, and she came to me as my Guru. Swami Kriyananda. At that meeting, O my Guru, a spark flew from thee, and the faggots of my God-craving gathered through incarnations smoldered and blazed into bliss. All my questions have been answered with thy flaming golden touch. Eternal, ever-present satisfaction has come to me through thy glory. My Guru, thou voice of God, I found thee in response to my soul cries. Slumbers of sorrow are gone, and I am awake in bliss. If all the gods are displeased, yet thou art pleased, I am safe in the fortress of thy pleasure. And if all the gods protect me behind the parapets of their blessings, yet I receive not thy benedictions, I am an orphan, left to pine spiritually in the ruins of thy displeasure. O Guru, thou didst bring me out of the bottomless pit of darkness into the paradise of peace. Our souls met after years of waiting. They trembled with an omnipresent thrill. We met here because we had met before. Together we will fly to his shores, where we will smash our planes of finitude forever and vanish into infinite life. I bow to thee as the spoken voice of silent God. I bow to thee as the divine door which leads to the temple of salvation. I bow to thee, to thy master, Lahiri Mahashaya, harbinger of yoga in Benares, and I lay the flowers of my devotion at the feet of Babaji, our supreme master.
Share our wonder in thy love. Lift Master, may thy joy fill our days. O Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. The time has come for us to see that there's but one reality under the earth and high above, the truth that all was made from love. A love that calls to us to fly above the hills, above the sky, above the storms, above the pain, a land where peace and laughter reign. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. Guide all our hopes and all our dreams, past every glow that only seems, into the light, the inner sun, into the truth that we're all one. Help us to find in every hour, in every thought, in every flower, a joy that spans eternity, the truth that makes us ever free. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. The time has come for us to see that there's but one reality upon the earth and high above, the truth that all was made from love. A love that calls to us to fly above the hills, above the sky, above the storms, above the pain, a land where peace and laughter reign. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. Guide our hopes and all our dreams, past every goal that only seems, into the light, the inner sun, into the truth that we're all one. Help us to find in every hour, in every thought, in every flower, a joy that spans eternity, the truth that makes us ever free. Oh,
Almost all the music that we sing was either written by Swami Kriyananda or by Master himself, except for that song. And there's a few others, but that song was written by a devotee named Mukti, who was part of Ananda in the very early years. She wrote it early. Swamiji rewrote the poetry a little bit, but the melody was hers, and the inspiration of it was hers. He just, as he put it, he articulated more clearly what she was trying to say, but the chorus and everything. And it was very interesting because she subsequently, she's remained deeply devoted to Master, but she went on from Ananda to live in other places in other ways. And Swami remarked just so seriously, she got very, very good karma for writing that song. Which is just sort of just an interesting thought, because so many people have been inspired, and the force of it, the original inspiration of it, came through her. I was just trying to think about how many things that happen in this world, we have no idea what's actually really going on. And we don't have much of a sense of what the impact of our actions actually is. I mean, I don't want to dwell unnecessarily or too long on her, because I actually haven't seen her in many years. I have no idea what she's doing. But that, leaving that song, and I know at least one person, and probably more, who came onto the spiritual path or came to Ananda from hearing that song, because it just said something to them. And very often when people have come through Ananda, the music is what holds them, or the music is what turns them. Swamiji made the statement that the music that he's composed, that's come through him, is how he calls it. He used the phrase, it's a new consciousness that has come as music. And I was sharing, and forgive me, I don't remember the context, so some of you may have heard this recently. I read a novel that was an old novel. It's called The House of Fulfillment. It was written by a woman who wrote under several pseudonyms. And it was just a novel about spiritual life. It's a beautiful novel. It's about 100 years old, I think. It's very old. And it had English people going to India and meeting gurus and, that kind of thing. And the heroine of the novel, but there's truth in novels, Swami actually suggested to me that I should write a novel, because he said the world is changed more often by a novel than by anything else. Which is actually interesting. Uncle Tom's Cabin comes to mind, which helped end slavery. Because sometimes, and when Swami wrote The Time Tunnel, he wrote 2 novels, that was one. And in The Time Tunnel, these young boys go forward and backwards in time through the time tunnel. And Swami could just say whatever he wanted to say. And I said, this is so great, because in a novel, your intuition is freed from the necessity to build rational bridges. You can just state. And so I know in that book, Swami stated a great deal that he knew to be true about future yugas and past yugas, but he didn't have to justify any of it. You just say it. So this woman in this novel, the heroine becomes highly enlightened. She's up in the Himalayas with her master, and then her master tells her that she has to go back into the world, that what she has vibrationally, the vibration of spirit that she has, she can't keep. She has to give it away. But she needs a form in which to give it. And so she sits in this state of enlightenment and can see all the possible ways this could express. She could become a musician, she could become a poet, she could become a dancer, and she becomes a sculptor. And she becomes, in the story, she becomes very famous, although her personality, nobody knows really who she is, just her work is known. But standing at the source of the vibration, she realized it's the vibration that needs to be expressed, and any form will express it, as long as the vibration is there. This is Swami's book, Art as a Hidden Message. So Swamiji took the statement about his music even one step further. Well, really not that much further, but this is a new age, this is new consciousness. Master came to lift the planet into a new reality from where we've been, and to lift us, or all those who care to be lifted, whether disciples or not, who care to be lifted into a new vibration. This is a new consciousness. Master called his work a special dispensation. That was where we were talking about it in the Conversations with Yogananda class, in the latest one of the very end ones. There's the story about this young man coming over from India on the boat to study at a university in America, and he had a vision of Master on the boat. He had no idea who Master was, and he had his own guru. Later he happened to see Master and recognized him from the vision, but Master didn't draw him as a disciple, and in fact Master said he had his own path. He wasn't meant to be my disciple. Swami Kriyananda then said, "Why then did he have a vision of you?" Master's answer was, "Because this is a special dispensation." I said, "Swami, what does that mean? Does that mean that we get more than we deserve?" He said, "Sort of." You know, that the power is so great that anyone, even with a little bit of spiritual karma, can catch it, can catch the wave. Because that tremendous force had to be sent into the world, because we're moving from one yuga into another. I mean, 1700, 1900, our masters just passed right over that transition point. Master came in just before Dwapara Yuga started. And with this, you can almost feel it. You know, the Swami talks in The Path about how when Master would lecture, he would run out onto the platform and he would say, how feels everyone, and he would lead them. I mean, he was in his 30s when he was doing that? He came in 1920, and in 1930s he was doing that. Swami described him as one of the most successful public speakers in America, in American history almost. I mean, imagine, he's a God-realized master. He's doing miracle healings. He's doing phenomenal acts of strength. And more than that, he's bringing in, and he's creating this wave, like plowing through the materialism of this Western world. I mean, think of it, him coming from India on the first boat that sailed, after the First World War? Was that when he came? And he comes to this country who's never seen anything like him. I mean, now we've become this global village, especially where we live here, and Indian masters are crossing back and forth, and people are going to India all the time. But when Master arrived, he was a phenomenon like no one had ever seen before. And of course, he would be a phenomenon like no one has ever seen, even if there's a whole platoon of Indian teachers, because, of course, of who he was. And he would rush out onto the platform and demand of everyone that they wake up and join him. In the end, a handful did. Thousands came to see him, and to marvel at what they were seeing, and undoubtedly to talk about what had happened. And who knows how many of them, over many years, many incarnations, the power of that single contact will gradually penetrate. That was Edgar Casey's statement about people who saw Jesus 2,000 years later. Everything else that happened in their incarnations was defined by that contact with Jesus. Think about the thousands of people in America who saw Master rush out onto that stage. Think about the auditoriums that were enlivened by his consciousness. Master said that anywhere a master goes, his vibrations live forever. And he crisscrossed the country, Master did, just going everywhere. What was he doing? What was he thinking? What was he seeing? What was he seeing about us? Each one of us. And then we come in, some of us came in just before Master passed, or just in all the years since, just drawn. How, who, why? The mind just, you really can't make sense out of it. And the less you try, the better. It's a magnetic pulse of energy. It's the Om vibration. It's the Gayatri mantra. It's a new consciousness that comes in all sorts of ways, and through the eyes of the Master, and through the eyes of those that the Master has touched. And then we're just living our lives, many of us in a state of desperate confusion, certainly speaking for myself, just a quiet desperation, as Thoreau called it, because it was just too much trouble to make trouble. But just, I think of myself before I met Swami. I participated in life. I appeared to be someone. But I always felt that I was standing against the wall, looking at the room, thinking, what is going on here? Just like the only thing I really enjoyed, I guess actually, was fantasy, which is I enjoyed theater. I enjoyed being somebody else. Just having the opportunity to be somebody else and then act out their world, because then I didn't have to think about mine. That got kind of scary for me, though, after I left school and I was in community theater, because I played the part, what was it? The Crucible. And there was a young girl who accuses people of witchcraft and stuff like that. It's a pretty icky role when you actually really think about it. It was juicy from the idea of being an actor, but and I remember rehearsing it and just sitting there in a perfectly normal way, and then shrieking and yelling and accusing and crying and all these things, which I did perfectly comfortably. It scared me to death. It's like, who am I? What am I? What is real in all of this? If I can just be this person now and this person now, merely because I have a script in my hand, and that I wanted to do it, that I could, it was like, where is the line of truth? And that was what was so confusing about life. Just like, where is the line of truth? Everybody has an opinion. Everybody wants you to do what they're doing. But where is the overarching? Whenever Swamiji is asked, or has had the opportunity at the end of his life, do I need a guru? What is a guru? He would always tell the same story. He would say, I reached the point in my life where I realized that I needed to change and I couldn't do it myself. And there's this word, surrender. There's these words, discipleship, really receiving, offering, being guided, all these different ways that we think about it. But it all begins when we hit the limit of who I am, of what I can do and how I can function. And only when we've fallen off that cliff of knowing that it's not going to work out without help, does that help come. And then the rest of our lives, once we are drawn to that, even, it doesn't have to be in the form of your actual guru, but into the quest for truth, the serious quest for truth. The serious quest that says, I will actually put out effort and I will actually change. I will not merely lament my brief college career. The distinguishing feature I realized between me and all my women colleagues as in college, freshmen, not all of them, but almost all of them, is that we were all unhappy, but I was willing to change. And most everyone else I met wanted others to change. And I was astute enough even then to see that that was not going to work. But then how? And then I found out how, which was self-realization. But then there was even a bigger how is it going to work? And what happened when Swami Kriyananda walked into the room was that I saw it exemplified. It was like I knew it was possible to actually be very different. But it was the first time I saw someone who was really different. Swamiji talks about reading Autobiography of a Yogi, being drawn to that book. You all have heard him, many of you have heard him tell that story himself. Just seeing Master's picture and seeing those eyes, and it's a new consciousness that comes in the form of a person that manifests into the world through a human body. But it's not the human body. It's the vibration of consciousness coming through that human body, through those eyes, and it becomes personal. It just becomes personal. All of a sudden, this isn't an abstraction. This isn't a movement. This isn't a religion. This isn't a dogma. This is personal. This is between me and him, or me and God, or me and Divine Mother. But it's personal. There only needs to be one in the world for that to happen. Swamiji added to our Festival of Light at a certain point about it's not only Jesus and Krishna, God loves us all equally. Not only Jesus and Krishna and great saints everywhere, but even in essence those on earth who have sinned most greatly. You know, every time I read that, which of course I read it very often, those on earth who have sinned most greatly, I think, who is he talking about? You know, it's like he makes it as strong as he can make it. Those who have sinned most greatly. But, well, that's me. If not in this lifetime, in some other lifetime. We never get to the point where we're done with this world until we've tried everything. What I've been calling recently, we have to test out every alternate theory of happiness, every single one of them. You know, and a lot of them are sinning most greatly because those are very attractive. The potential for power or pleasure or whatever it might be. Sinning is just ignorance. But there has to be a great level of ignorance and a great commitment to trying it out before we realize it's not going to work. And the only reason we know it is because we've experienced it. Nobody takes anybody's word for it, really. We might be polite, we might be frightened enough, but underneath it we never believe it till we actually experience it, do we? And so we have sinned most greatly and suffered as a consequence of it. And then we've suddenly the ego gets broken. It's really all that happens. The ego just gets really broken. And we just are at that point where help, and we really mean it. And then God really answers, and then all of a sudden there's a light beam of truth. And it's just a laser line. And the more we stand in it, the more sensitive we become to when we've moved off it. And that's what life becomes. Life becomes walking it, accidentally moving off of it, realizing that we're off of it, searching desperately, finding it again, whether it's 70 times a day or long years. You know, we have good decades. And then you have an astrological period that was 18 years, and then it shifts. And you discover that you're not who you thought you were. I mean, all these things happen, but that line never changes. And once you know it's there, then really salvation is assured. That's a very startling thing to think about. It's really assured because now we actually know. Now we actually know what true happiness is. And even if we've only known it for a split second, the soul never forgets. You know, being in Israel as I was so much in the last, 14 months or so, just seeing that life of Jesus, and in the position I was, constantly explaining it over the course of almost 30 days. just retelling it and retelling it and reliving it and living through what those disciples went through and how they didn't expect him to be arrested, and they certainly didn't expect him to be crucified. And then, my goodness, he just came back. And he didn't just sort of show up once, but for 40 days, he just kept being there. And in so many of the biblical accounts, he fries fish. He fries fish and shares bread. But what they're trying to say to you was that he was just there. They saw him die. They laid his body into a tomb. And then, guess what? Be of good cheer. I have conquered this world. And how that thread, which is Jesus, it's not just like a wisp of his consciousness. It's him. St. Francis would see Jesus. Jesus would come and sit on the altar of the temple. They would chat. St. Teresa of Avila, Jesus would just come and be with her in her cell. This is not just a dim theory. This is the Master comes and goes as easily as we walk in and out of any other room. And he comes when he's called. He who says the name of Babaji attracts to himself an instant blessing. We have no idea. And this goes back to Mukti writes this beautiful song that we all sing. And this constant blessing accrues to her every time we sing that. There's a thread of, an interwoven thread of light. And every time we pull on that, it illuminates somewhere in her destiny. And her life will be opened up and made freer and made more beautiful. Her debts will be paid by the good karma that she had for being in tune enough to hear that song. Now, we're not all songwriters, we're not all those kinds of people. But every one of us, our debts will be paid if we simply turn to the light. And so Master came and lived on this world for a very short period of time. I was reflecting on something that I'd never really considered before, which is Swamiji wasn't quite 26 when Master died. He was 22 when he met him, and he wasn't 26 before Master passed. And Master passed suddenly. It wasn't like when Swami Kriyananda died, his health was so poor for so long. There were just we all knew that at any minute, you kept your passport completely up to date. I had to renew my passport once during those last 10 years, and I actually paid like $250 to get it back in 24 hours because I was so afraid that Swami would die in some other country and I wouldn't have my passport. It was just like I couldn't do it. It was crazy, but I had to have it. But when Master passed, he was at the height of everything and fully. He was planning to go to India. He was going to take Swami to India with him. They had all these plans. Swami was just a young man. Everything seemed to be starting. And then all of a sudden, Master's standing there. He recites My India. He sighs. He falls to the ground. And then he's gone. Now, what I was reflecting on, and this is that many years later, I was at least about 2003 or 2004, and I'd had decades with Swami, and I never asked him or heard anyone ask the question that Shivani asked him in a satsang in Gurgaon in India. She said, "What was it like for you when Master died?" And I never thought to ask Swami. And Swami, who was very forthcoming as a rule, but he withdrew very much when she asked that question. And he said, "That's a very personal question." And, I hadn't asked it, but I shrank a little. And then he was silent for a moment. And then he said, "It was heartbreaking." Like that. I thought, oh my gosh, I've never seen it from his point of view. But then I started thinking about why. Why had he never expressed that? Because he needed us to understand that we didn't have to know Master in the body to know Master in our hearts. And if Swami had let any of that out, how would we have felt? His bereavement would have been a fraction of ours, but he had to show us by his, and I realized I'd never asked him that question, because in his presence I never thought Master was gone. And it wasn't only that Swamiji channeled him so beautifully, it was because Swami was so absolutely natural in the fact that Master was as present as he'd ever been. When Master said to Swamiji, I know every single thought that every one of you thinks, when I heard Swami say that, I said, Sir, is that still true? And he looked at me like, what a dim-witted little girl you are. And he just said, of course. And the way he said that, of course. Oh, of course. If time is an illusion, if death is really an illusion, if the Master is omnipresent, if this world is a dream, if any aspect of this teaching is true, then of course. Why don't we know that? As many as received him. And that's what we have to work on. That's our single and only job, is to be receptive. To be receptive to that bright line of truth that's always there, and always be standing somehow in relation to that light of love, of goodness, of kindness. It's not really very obscure. We know what it feels like, and it's really so simple. It's not easy, but it's so simple. We have to love as he loved. We have to give as he gave. We have to value what he valued. We have to serve as he served. And then, everything we long for, if not today, it will come tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, the day after. Because we're earning very, very good karma. And everything we do in any effort to love and to give in the name of God is returned to us 1,000-fold. There's this wonderful line translated in the Bible where Jesus says, the world will, actually I think he says despise you, some really strong word. Swamiji was rewriting Walk Like a Man at one point, that song, and go on alone. And then he wrote in for a while, let them despise you, but go on alone. I said, sir, I said lots of things that were really dumb. I said, sir, it's kind of hard to let them despise you, go on alone. It's like, it doesn't go very far. And he looked at me so serious, though, very serious. He said, they will. Oh my gosh, I've never forgotten that. He did finally change the word back because it was just terrible. But I never forgot that. But they will. Meaning, where does your comfort come from? Are you going to walk the bright line of truth, or are you going to look for comfort outside yourselves? But in the Bible, Jesus says something about how the world will hate you. That's what it says. The world, because you're my disciples, the world will hate you. But then Jesus says, but be of good cheer, I have conquered the world. And that's the message of all the masters. Be of good cheer, whatever it might be. Because through their power, they have and we will conquer everything that holds us away from the light. So, bless you.
This is an excerpt from The New Path, the chapter of the Master's final days. Thursday evening, March 6th, Master returned from a ride in the car. He had asked Clifford Frederick, who was driving, to take him onto Rome Drive behind Mount Washington. There, gazing at the main building, he remarked quietly, "It looks like a castle, doesn't it?" The monks had just finished their group practice of energization exercises when Master's car entered the driveway. As we gathered around him, he touched each of us in blessing, and then spoke at length about some of the delusions devotees encounter on the path. "Don't waste your time," he said. "No one can give you the desire for God. That is something you must cultivate yourselves. Don't sleep a great deal. Sleep is the unconscious way of contacting God. Meditation is a state beyond sleep, superconsciousness as opposed to subconsciousness. Don't spend too much time joking. I myself like to laugh, but I keep my sense of humor fully under control. When I am serious, nobody can tempt me to laugh. Be happy within, grave but ever cheerful. Why waste your spiritual perceptions on useless words? When you have filled the bucket of your consciousness with the milk of peace, keep it that way. Don't drive holes in it by joking and idle speech. Don't waste time on distractions, reading all the time and so on. If reading is instructive, of course it is good. But I tell people, if you read 1 hour, then write 2 hours, think 3 hours, and meditate all the time. No matter how much this organization keeps me busy, I never forego my daily tryst with God. In the basement, minutes later, Master saw a box of green coconuts that had just arrived from Abby George's brother in Florida. Back at the car, Divine Mother was trying to tell me that these coconuts had come, but I didn't listen. I was talking too much. Master, laughing genially, opened a coconut and drank from it, but his enjoyment seemed to me somehow tinged with unreality. I looked into his eyes and saw them deep, still, completely untouched by what he was doing. In retrospect, it seems like the heartiness of someone who knew he was bidding us goodbye, but didn't want us to know that that was what he was doing. Catching my glance, he became all at once almost grave. "I have a big day tomorrow," he said. Walking towards the elevator, he paused at the door and then repeated, "I have a big day tomorrow. Wish me luck." The following day, March 7th, he came downstairs to go out. He was scheduled to attend a banquet that evening at the Biltmore Hotel in honor of the Indian ambassador. "Imagine," he said, "I've taken a room at the Biltmore. That is where I first started in this city." Then again he repeated, "Wish me luck." Master had asked me to attend the banquet with Dick Hames, the popular singer and movie actor. Dick had recently become a disciple and had taken Kriya initiation from me. Years ago, Master had said, "When I leave this earth, I want to go speaking of my America and my India." And in a song about India that he had written, to the tune of the popular song My California, he paraphrased the ending of that popular version with the words, "I know when I die, in joy I will sigh for my sunny, grand old India." Once, too, in a lecture, he had stated, "A heart attack is the easiest way to die. That is how I choose to die. This evening, all these predictions were to prove true. Master was scheduled to speak after the banquet. His brief talk was so sweet, so almost tender, that I think everyone present felt embraced in the gossamer net of his love. Warmly he spoke of India and America, and of their respective contributions to world peace and true human progress. He talked of their future cooperation. Finally, he read his beautiful poem, My India. Throughout his speech, I was busy recording his words, keeping my eyes on my notebook. He came to the last lines of the poem, where Ganges, woods, Himalayan caves, and men dream God. I am hallowed. My body touched that sod. Sod became a long, drawn-out sigh. Suddenly, from all sides of the room, there came a loud cry, and I looked up. "What is it?" I demanded of Dick Hames, seated beside me. "What happened?" "Master fainted," he replied. "Oh, no, no, Master, you wouldn't faint. You've left us. You've left us." The forgotten playwright in me silently cried, "This is too perfect a way for you to go for it to mean anything else." I hastened to where Master lay. A look of bliss was on his face. Virginia Wright was stooped over him, trying desperately to revive him. Mr. Ahuja, the Consul General, came over to me and put an arm around my shoulders to comfort me. Never, dear friend, will I forget that sweet act of kindness. They brought Master's body to Mount Washington and placed it lovingly on his bed. One by one we went in, weeping, and knelt by his bedside. "Mother," cried Joseph, "oh, Mother." Indeed, Master had been a mother to all of us. Ah, and how much more than a mother. Miss Lancaster gave me an anguished look. "How many thousands of years it took," marveled Laurie Pratt, gazing upon him in quiet awe, "to produce such a perfect face." Later on, after we'd left the room, Faye remained alone with Master's body. As she gazed at him, a tear formed on his left eyelid and slowly trickled down his cheek. Lovingly, she caught it with her handkerchief. She would always preserve it. In death, as in life, he was telling his beloved disciple, and through her, the rest of us, "I love you always." Through endless cycles of time, unconditionally, without any desire except for your happiness, forever, in God. This next piece of music was written by Swami Kriyananda, and as Asha was speaking about, there's vibrational qualities and new consciousness in many or all of these pieces. Many of them are, as Swami said, antidotes to certain negative qualities. And this next song is the antidote for overcoming fear of death. Swami writes, "The secret of overcoming fear of death is to deepen your awareness of that central part in your being which never changes, but weaves like a thread through life's tapestry of apparently unrelated circumstances. The consciousness of change is allied to the fear of death, but to see changelessness at the heart of change is the secret of immortality."
Oh.
I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death and return to Earth's shores from my home in space. I want to load my boat with all those waiting, thirsty ones who have been left behind, that I may carry them to the opalescent pool of iridescent joy, there where my Father distributes his all desire-quenching liquid peace. Oh, I will come back again and again, crossing 1,000,000 crags of suffering. With bleeding feet I will come, if need be 1,000,000,000,000 times, as long as I know that one stray brother is left behind. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. I want thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with others, that all my brothers may find the way to happiness forever and forever in thee.
Let's close with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Master, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, humbly we bow to you all. May thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion, and may we be able to awaken thy love in all hearts. Om. Peace. Amen.